Welcome to the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. This episode is brought to you by Authors Unite. Authors Unite provides you with all the resources you need to become a successful author. You can learn more about Authors Unite and join the free community at authorsunite.com. Now, let's jump into the episode. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Business Blast podcast. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Kole Whitty. She works in body integration for contribution-obsessed entrepreneurs. So welcome to the show, Kole.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Super happy about it.
Yes. Awesome to have you here as well, Kole. And we'll dive in. The first question I have for you, Kole, is what's the best story from your life that has an underlying valuable message?
One. I mean, that's kind of a loaded question in itself. I mean, honestly, there's three instances that have the same story. One was from a coma from a drug overdose. One was, had I listened to my body to not go to that particular location that night, I would not have ended up in a coma. So that was the first instance. The second instance was, don't turn around right now. And when I turned around, I had a gun pointed at my head. I had a bad feeling about, and it ended up having to get me involved. So that was the second time. The third time that I felt this overwhelming need to listen to my body, it actually worked out well for me. So in that particular instance, it was time to leave my first marriage. So really the underlying lesson is really understanding and listening to that instinctual intelligence of my body.
And what's the most valuable piece of information we should know that's within your expertise or industry?
Well, I would just say that right now, especially, everyone's talking about biohacking, and biohacking is an incredible tool, at least as far as gaining access to the science of your body, but you can't just hack the body. You're missing an opportunity to integrate with those instinctual intelligence. So all the supplementation in the world can't override the subconscious thought patterns, and those are just as much contributors of physical manifestations, especially for entrepreneurs who are, there is no end to their work time, and they kind of mind over matter their body, and you can't do that with body.
And what's your best piece of overall business advice? So not necessarily industry specific.
Well, that's easy because there's 3 P's that I would say is like a business. This is across the board for any business circumstance. And that's to always pause, physical scan, and proceed at any point if you're feeling overwhelmed. And that could be business, relation, or other. Because if you'll first pause for a second and kind of go through your body and tag some of the sensation going on, it's going to not only teach you your body's language, but it's also going to give you the opportunity to start to choose differently in a given scenario. The number 2 of that, that's the second as far as the physical scan, is where you go through and tag each individual sensorium, because that's going to really start to give you a lot of perspective in the future. And you can take a moment to say, have I been breathing? Have I had any water? And have I eaten? Because I don't know about you, but if I don't eat, lots of things start to go wrong. And the last thing is to proceed from that point. So once you know if you're hydrated, once you know you've had enough oxygen and that you've been fed, then you're more equipped to expand beyond your current experience and move forward, whether it's just kind of seeing where you are, maybe you took on too much, or just that you needed to eat. Now you know it, you can proceed accordingly.
And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Trust myself, really trusting that me being an outlier, me not doing it the traditional way was going to be my greatest asset as an adult. Because just by not having to commit, say, to one career or one foundational piece of myself, I've always been willing to change. I've always been willing to jump ship, even if I had already invested a lot of time or money or energy into something, if it just didn't feel right. So the only thing I would say is just trust yourself, trust that people aren't going to understand, but you will ultimately make that your greatest attribute as it comes to working with other entrepreneurs, because I've worked in so many different fields.
And kind of got a little different path, but in your opinion, what is the key to happiness?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that happiness is even a state. It's kind of like this really broad language that a lot of people use. So happiness to me is more of just being able to accept all that I am and all that I am not, and who I choose to be with what I have. So if that means that I get really angry about something, that I have the tools to actually allow that anger and find ways to process it in a healthy way, not trying to override or mind over matter my body or my emotions to change them. So everything initially feels good, right? So I like to cry. I like to be angry. It can be very empowering. It's that moment that it's no longer feeling good, that it's no longer keeping me in my happiness. So my happiness is the freedom to emote, the freedom to move around, and the freedom of location.
I love that answer. Thank you for that. And what is the best book that you've read, and what is the number one thing you learned from that?
Best book? That's not even fair. All right, I'm just gonna go. It's not fair. The books right now, I'm huge right now into neuroplasticity. I'm super fascinated by it. So there's a book called Genius Food by Max Logavere that I'm really loving. There's another one called Feed a Brain by Cabin Ballister. And then I'm a woman, so I'm studying more hormone stuff. And there's a book called Period Repair Manual by Laura Briden. So I couldn't give you one, but those are the three right now.
And that's fine. And what is your favorite quote and why? So maybe if you have three as well.
Yeah, quotes are rough too. Oh, quotes. Honestly, I can't even think of one off the top of my head right now. It's like it's so consistently changing. I'm so consistently like evolving and on to newer things. Nothing's coming like off the top of my head right now, to be honest.
No worries. So how about the quote is just the present interview we're in? How about that?
True.
So perfect. Thank you so much for coming on. The last question I have for you before we let you go then is, where's the best place for people to find you online?
Best place to find me. So it's tahkole.com. It's TAHKOLE.com. That's my husband and my name combined. So www.tahkole.com. Same with on Facebook and Instagram and all the other places. And also healingyourwomb.com, specifically around women's health issues, hormonal imbalances, and also emotional, just the way the women internalize a bit. So those would be the main ways, I think.
Perfect. Thanks again for coming on, Kole. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.